Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. This is the podcast where we invite you to text the questions that you might be wrestling with asking, being asked of you, coming up against, don't know what to do with, that relate to the Bible, Christianity, Jesus, God, everything in between, your spiritual life, how it intersects with the struggles and issues and challenges and beliefs in this world. I'm David Gadini from Fellowship of Faith here in McHenry, Illinois. On studio today with Andrew Metcalf. Big shout out to Andrew with Steve Wells. And we got Randy Birchfield or Sparkplug with Sparkplug Ministries back in the house today. Ken Jones producing. Good to see you guys. Hey, let me get you that number really quick. If you got a question, pretty simple. The show is driven by your questions. We want the crazy ones, the easy ones, the hard ones, the complex ones, the ones that you're afraid to ask, embarrassed to ask, maybe have been judged to ask, or haven't felt like you've been getting good, honest, solid answers on in the past. 815-314-0363. 815-314-0363. If you're joining us on Facebook through Fellowship of Faith or 216 The Net, you can post your questions there as well. Got a deep inbox, but we found out this is actually episode 99 today. The last of the double digits. We're hitting the century mark next Wednesday, and we just started talking right before the show. We have absolutely no clue what to do for a 100th kind of show. So if you have an idea for the 100th show, Steve was kind of saying we should be dancing on the show more. I mean, I don't know what your suggestions might be, but feel free to text those in or post them on Facebook, and Steve will do it. I think I can pretty much guarantee that.
Fireworks.
Steve will do it.
Yes, fireworks.
Virtual communion, huh?
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, I know. That's like, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
We're gonna watch Ken do that.
But you can only do it once every 100 weeks.
Yeah, right.
So it's very special
Right.
communion.
You just said once every 100 weeks, and then my mind went to, wow, so that'd be 100 more shows, right? Which just seems like, well, that's common sense. But you said something the other day in church, and it just blew my mind. And it's totally common sense, but I'm thinking, okay, so if Jesus were alive today, which on the earth, he would be 2023 years old. Why didn't I I just don't think that way,
That's right, yeah.
Wow, he would be 2023 years old. So it's
That's an
really
old
easy to
man.
remember how old he is because,
It's pretty easy to kind of mark, yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, I just put that together right now.
Yeah. Like the angels are like, oh,
yeah,
right,
totally.
Right.
But then other people, the angels may be doing that because they're nice, but other people are like, you're an idiot.
Well, you just keep coming back,
I mean, I'm here.
Pick it up.
But at the same time, it's like Paul, Paul lives with us and he was born in 2000. Really?
Yeah, not the Apostle Paul, who's also about 2,000 years old, right? If he was
Right,
alive on the
right.
earth today. All
He'd
right.
be around
All right,
there,
just
too.
so we're being clear here.
Right
Yeah.
So
'Cause-
Jesus is actually 2,000 years older to the day than Paul.
Yeah.
Paul,
Okay.
my son.
Okay. Was he born on?
To the day.
Yeah,
to the
because
day?
we know what day Jesus was born on.
Yeah, because of course it was December 25th, right? Yeah.
Christmas. Yeah. So they share a birthday. No.
Paul's getting ripped on that one. I got to tell you, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk
Anyway,
about living under the cloud.
just wanted to share my enlightenment with you.
All
guys.
right. Hey.
It's good. Anyone else have anything they want to share? I don't know how to top that, really.
I know. Really. Yeah.
Anything more stupid than that?
No, that's cool.
Okay.
It actually is.
Don't
It
beat
is. No,
yourself
no,
up.
we have those
No, don't
moments,
beat yourself
honestly.
up.
Honestly.
I was
all
just sitting there
sincerity
going,
now.
oh, wow, that means Jesus is 223 years old because
Or
it was
2023.
sorry.
Yeah.
AD, right?
Yeah.
It's the little things in life that get you.
Got to enjoy them.
That is the heart of the show right there, right? The
Yeah.
mild epiphanies and minor epiphanies in life. Well, Andrew, I'm going to challenge you on something.
Yes.
So I pulled up and I saw what the inbox is, and you've been avoiding these first two questions for 19 weeks. I swear. I don't know why you just don't want to go there and rip off the Band-Aid and get these over with. Can we get these over with today?
We can do it. Yeah.
And again, if you're listening here today and you ask these two questions, they're good questions. They're just kind of in the we need the Arcana department. I feel like we even need a soundtrack that goes Arcana.
I don't
something,
think
and
these
then-
people even listen anymore. They probably gave up.
They did. They're like, these people are never going to answer our question. Andrew will not touch these two questions.
Now I'm super
true.
curious.
Oh,
Me
believe me,
too.
you are going to be
I
so
have no
disappointed,
idea.
Steve.
There's a
You know?
couch right over there.
I'm
Actually,
geeking out
there's
on
not
these
anymore,
questions.
yeah.
I love these questions,
Oh,
but
okay.
well then.
yeah, we know exactly where this is going.
Okay,
Set
let's
your
go.
timers for 10
Join us
minutes,
next
everyone.
week for question number 2.
When Jesus read from the scroll from Isaiah, was he reading in Greek from the Septuagint, or was he reading in Hebrew?
Oh, yes.
The reading of the scroll would have been at the Nazareth synagogue.
Yeah, you got it. So let's do a little bit of terminology work here first, because people are dropping some language bombs on us, right? The Septuagint. It's the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was predominantly used by the apostles and most of the Jewish world in the 1st century AD. The reason you know that it was used by the apostles and most of the 1st century world is that the Septuagint kind of functions like the Message translation, or maybe maybe like the New Living Translation today. It's not like a strict word for word. It kind of paraphrases things at times and takes some liberties. So if you see an exact quote coming out of like a dynamic translation of the Bible, it's pretty safe to assume that they're using it. It's like if you look up, like, the New Testament quotes the Old Testament all the time. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, it's word for word Septuagint. So when you look at the story in Luke chapter 4, and Luke, Jesus is in this Nazareth synagogue, right? And he gets the scroll of Isaiah, and then he reads it, and then he sits down, and all the people's eyes are intently fixed on him, and he goes, "Today this is fulfilled in your hearing." What you read in Luke 4 is from the Septuagint. I mean, it's mirroring the Septuagint there, right? But whether Jesus actually read it out of that, or whether that Nazareth synagogue was using a Hebrew scroll, which could be very arguably probably made, I would think, but that's debatable. So how about this? You don't know, but that's some of the background and some of the surrounding things around it. And if you're kind of into Bible translations and where the Bible comes from, it's actually kind of I find important stuff in conversations today, because there's a lot of knee-jerk challenges people just kind of make without thinking it through about the Bible, that, it's just made up, or how can you know it's accurate, or like no one really knows. And like people kind of come up with these weird harebrained conspiracy theories about how its transmission got handed down. So all this kind of like roots out of that. And if you're interested in that kind of stuff, that's some terminology and some maybe some facts to fill in some holes and get you going with some things. So there we go. Got to see that wasn't bad. But Randy, were we okay?
Good.
I'm not
good
gonna
on
ask.
time.
I'm not
Yes,
asking Steve.
good on time.
Ken, we're all right. All right. See, look at that.
He's still awake. You're
Yeah.
awake.
I didn't know what you were even saying. I just watched your mouth move.
But we got one more that has Septuagint as well.
Charlie Brown.
Yeah, right.
So when Augustine was writing his Christian theology, was he writing in Latin or Greek? Which Bible would he have been referring to? The Latin Vulgate of Jerome or the Greek Septuagint?
All right. So Augustine or Augustine, you'll see people pronounce it both ways, is arguably considered the most important theologian in Christian history, not counting like apostolic people. You're not going to like put him up against Paul or something like that, right? But whether you're Catholic or Protestant, we all kind of root back. I mean, I know here on this show, you guys love the free will predestination kind of conversation and argumentation for things without even knowing it. You're standing on Augustine's shoulders with that. I mean, that's all kind of like his argumentation and development and theological research that leads to that debate. I won't go down that trail more now, but he's one of these guys that's like pivotal, and you don't even realize it, and you don't even realize that what you believe finds clarification and root in him, as he would really kind of interpret and try to make sense logically of the Bible, so to speak, and apply it to these categories. So that's who the guy is. And if you want to ever read Augustine, read what's called his Confessions. It's considered to be the first true autobiography in the modern sense of the world in human history or in Western history. And basically, we take it.
Just a very self-obsessed, important person.
No,
Okay.
not that.
No one else had thought about writing about themselves.
It's actually much the opposite. And I mean, have you guys ever read these books, or do you kind of like resonate with people who are just kind of like writing their own reflection on something in the first person?
Yeah.
And you kind of take it for granted, but like just wasn't like done that way. And when he's writing his Confessions, there's certainly things he is confessing in the sense that we think about it. But the word confession more broadly means is just giving kind of his reason for his beliefs. And he's just giving a very personal witness of this is what I believe and why I believe it, and some of my life history and the crises I faced and what led me to it. Stuff like that. You got? So long story short, he is considered like the premier like Latin writer. So he was a Latin writer. He knew Greek. And whether he used the Vulgate or not is a bit tricky. So there's this other guy named Jerome. So if you want to plug Augustine into like a timeline, just go like 400 AD. You know, I mean, he lived more than a year, but it's just kind of a good anchor mark, you know? And the Vulgate was really written right about the same time. If you don't know what the Vulgate is, there was this dude who was born an old man, and his name was Jerome. And he kind of got like swept up into the whole like monastic movement. But these early monastics were all like these desert people. Like they just try to separate themselves from humanity and like go out and live in like a cave in the desert by themselves. But like Jerome kind of had this problem that like A, people kind of wanted to like follow him, and B, he like wanted to bring like books and ink and parchment, and like it's kind of hard to live in a cave when you kind of turn into like a man cave, so to speak. So he's like, he gave up on that. But what he's notable for is translating the Bible into Latin. And so what he did is he did use the Septuagint, but more significantly, he was one of those first pivotal guys to go back to like the Hebrew and translate the Hebrew into Latin and, you know, the Greek New Testament as well. And it was the pivotal translation for Christianity for like over a millennium. I mean, it just, you know, you can't underestimate it. It seemed to be written about the same time that Augustine was doing his writing. And it's a little bit more complicated because it had a couple different revisions and forms. The stuff I've read seems to indicate that Augustine probably didn't use the Vulgate per se as we think about it today. But again, for those of you who like really get into the church history stuff, there you go. All right, Band-Aid number 2. And you know, I'm tired of looking at these questions. Like, you know, it's been up there.
We're
like,
just gonna keep going in order then to appease you.
Yeah, I want to know. Did you notice that I stepped away?
yo, I totally
You
did.
did.
Yeah, I totally did.
I
But
just
see, this
didn't.
is radio, so no one else did. So you know.
Right. Well, for those of you that are even looking, I don't know. It seems like we're being attacked by an army of woodpeckers outside of our door. Yeah. And it's happened twice now, so I had to go check the door.
Yeah,
So I was gone for a brief moment.
What was it? An army of
It had
woodpeckers?
nothing to do with your answer on
People
that
were
question.
people were very concerned. Where did he go?
I just was very concerned.
Steve's done.
I really
That's all I
wanted to
got,
just
guys.
continue listening to that, but I couldn't.
You're still reveling in like 2023.
Right,
you know, you
yeah.
just had to kind of bask in the moment a little bit longer, right?
23 years old.
So I actually have a follow-up question to what you were just talking about.
All right.
With the kind of you've mentioned fairly often like the monastic community and monks and those types of things.
Yeah, right.
I'm just picturing this dude going off in the desert by himself. How is that making disciples?
Well, it's
Like-
not. It's not. It's being one in their mind.
Okay.
Well, unless you
Well,
run
that's
into
what I was just
someone out
wondering.
there.
But like,
Yeah.
even like monks or other people who are like locking themselves away in monasteries to dedicate their lives to worshiping God, are they doing what Jesus called us to do?
Right. It's a
I
great
don't
question.
know.
No, it's a fantastic question. And here's what it's rooted in is you guys have noticed this, but there's like a paradoxical ethic you're going to find in Jesus' teachings and in the commands of the Bible. So like when you try to figure out how to live, it can feel like the Bible is talking out of two sides of its mouth at times. And people who don't understand what it's doing often use that as kind of a weapon against the Bible. But I think it's based in misconception. Let me give one example just to kind of phrase it. At one hand, you could say Jesus say something like this. You know, when you pray, don't babble on like the pagans do, who think that by their many words, God is going to hear them because God knows what you need before he even asks. So when you pray like this, and he gives the Lord's Prayer, which you could say in like 10 seconds, you know, but the point is you don't need to go on and on and on and on, right? But then you could read other places in the gospel where he says, you know, when you pray, think of God like an unjust judge. And he's not going to answer you because he cares, but because you have worn him down by your prayers and he finally wants to get you off his back. Well, so how do I pray?
Yeah.
Right? And it's not the only time Jesus does that or the New Testament ethic, if I can put it that way, does it. So let me set it up with the monastic question. At one hand, there's this entire like kind of body of ethic or body of morality, if you will, that's all about the purification of your soul, the purification of your life, resisting temptation, avoiding temptation, fleeing from that which is evil, devoting yourself to practices and things that are often challenged or compromised or whatever, right? By living in the world.
Mhm.
And so people who want to truly give up all they have to the poor and follow Jesus, as he said, would do that. You know, in things of a similar nature. And the monastic communities have always drawn on that side. But you're right. The challenge on the other side is, where is the idea of being salt and light in the world? Where is the idea of having an evangelistic impact in the world, of being a disciple maker in the world, of developing God's creation and bringing joy out of God's creation from the Genesis? And that they're paradoxical. And so what would kind of practically happen with these monastic people in the early days, like these we call them the desert fathers and mothers, is people go, man, these people are holy, and they would get groupies. Just like today, you know, there's like Christian celebrities, like who are people listening to on the podcasts? Who's getting 1 million hits on their messages? This is nothing new, just a different format. And so they would constantly be in this kind of like struggle of having to like keep running further, and that would only kind of increase the interest more, almost like a Forrest Gump thing where the crowds start like taking notice and gathering. And then they kind of realized, well, some of these people are kind of becoming my disciples. And they would do some practical things for them, like bring them food. Oh, that's kind of nice if you're trying to devote yourself to prayer for 18 hours a day. You don't have to worry about cooking, right? And going into town and stuff like that. And so some of the disciple making would actually happen by extension that way. But within the Christian monastic movement, your specific challenge is the corrective that came in. Not to completely erase that way of approach, but other schools of thought would come up going, no, we don't feel like we're truly living out the way of Jesus the way he called us to, and we need to kind of do this differently than just hiding in the desert.
Yeah, and I'd never thought of that before, but I mean, kind of like you said, if he did all this work translating the Bible, the Septuagint, into Latin, okay,
or the Hebrew scriptures,
it's like, okay, well, clearly that impacted people. So it's like, okay, can you do that work still without being around people and evangelizing in person, but with the work that you produce?
So I'm reading that. Did you guys ever see Ready Player One?
Yeah. That was
Okay. So cool movie. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's kind of like a near future post-apocalyptic America, like it's 2040s America, and things haven't, it's not like post-nuclear war in the like true sense, but like things have just gone from bad to worse with like poverty and economic equality. Yeah, there you go.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. South side, right?
Right.
And
It's gonna get better though, everyone.
Gary,
I promise.
Gary. Okay.
Anyway.
But the whole thing is predicated on the fact that there's kind of like your Steve Jobs or your Jeff Bezos or your Mark Zuckerberg, but he created something called the Oasis, which is a truly immersive, interactive, alternate reality of sorts, and everyone is treating it as an alternate reality. And the guy, this is fiction now, but the guy basically holed himself up and had no human interaction for the course of his life, but created the program that changed the world. So yeah, to your point, there's a modern day fictional approach, and certainly we know kind of similar stories from other people that done stuff like that.
Yeah. Since we're mentioning movies, I had an idea. So you were talking about wearing God down by your your never ceasing prayers, right? And it reminds me of the movie. You guys seen Shrek? Shrek.
Like the first one, right?
Oh, this one's 4.
Shrek 4.
Shrek 4.
All right.
No, I have not.
All
Okay.
right.
Still with you.
It's really good.
Like it's called like The Reckoning or something.
I don't know
isn't
what
it?
it's called. But
No, that was the Matrix 4, right?
but the way that I see it is that you're not really wearing him down. And I think if you go out and watch the movie Shrek 4, you'll see kind of how God, how he views our never ceasing prayers. And that is, there's this little boy and they're at the birthday party and Shrek is there. And there's this dad who's there who his kid wants to hear Shrek do the roar. The roar is something that Shrek is known for. And this was when he was a mean ogre. But now he's domesticated a little bit. He's married. He has 3 kids, and so he's kind of left those ways of being this mean ogre. Well, the kid really wants to hear it. And this kid gets anything he wants because his dad gives him anything that he wants. And so he's sitting there licking this little lollipop and his dad is beckoning Shrek to do this roar. And the little kid's like, he licks his lollipop. He's like, do the roar. And you see this little kid that, is tiny, but he's got this deep gruff voice. And he's like, do the roar. And he continues to do this over and over and over. Do the roar. And finally, Shrek blows up and just. That's how I imagine God with us and our never ceasing prayers for the same stupid crap that probably doesn't even matter half the time, right? But then all of a sudden he does it, and then maybe either we get it or we don't.
Yeah, right.
That's the way I see it.
I love it.
See, and I think of that reminded me of the family.
All right, I'm writing that down. Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, go watch the movie.
No, that reminded me of the Family Guy clip with Stewie, where he's trying to get Lois's attention, and they just drag it on for, I mean, probably 90 seconds of him just standing next to her going, Lois, Mom. And it goes on for so long, as Family Guy does. But, and then she just goes, what? And he goes, hi, and runs away.
So intellectually, we were up here, and now we're down here.
But it makes sense.
I have not translated anything into Latin ever. So
I think that's a worthwhile project for you. Devote your life to that. Hold yourself up. You're an introvert, right, Andrew?
I am. Yes,
hold yourself up.
You'll be
in pure joy. Yeah.
Just until you
start reverse translating
when you're released from that project.
Yeah. So my question for Andrew is, what is your plan for going out and creating disciples? Because if it's not going out and being alone with God, so you brought that question up as if that's not the way that I would do it. So I'm just curious.
No, I had that same thought as I was saying that question of just this conviction of, okay, I'm not setting myself apart in a desert. I'm living in a community with a lot of people. Yeah, how am I doing that? So I don't know that I have an active plan, but I think I convicted myself when I asked that question of, am I doing what I think Jesus told us to do?
Right.
It's an interesting thought.
Should we have an active plan?
I think fasting
It's a
can bring
worthwhile question
around
in
that.
itself.
I think fasting can bring that forward in somebody's life. Like if you've never tried the Daniel fast, give that a shot.
Yeah, are you just coming off of it, or are you still doing it?
A couple weeks ago, I came off of it. Yeah.
And what was that for those that
the easiest way is no meats, no sweets. That's the easiest way to describe it. So nothing from meat, no meat in general.
And it's based off of Daniel chapter 1, where Daniel's brought into captivity out into Babylon, and he doesn't want to eat unclean food, so he denies like all the meat that they're trying to serve him because you don't know if it's kosher, right? And he goes strict vegetarian, and he's healthier than all the rest of the people. And did Rick Warren coin the Daniel fast?
Maybe.
I know he popularized it, but I don't know if it originated with him. All right.
Yeah, I just know that, like, for me, I could white knuckle it for 3 days.
Yeah.
But then it was almost like having a nervous breakdown of like, I really need to make a plan for what I'm going to eat because this is too much.
Yeah, right.
I think Daniel came up with the Daniel.
You think Daniel did?
Yeah. He was the OG.
I guess he was the OG. Sure. Yeah.
Makes more sense than Rick.
But, mainstream. But yeah, and anyways, I think that like separates you from the world in a way in which you can kind of see what is God's like calling in my life. Because I know I came out of that like just on fire with ideas and passion and vision and all these things.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just hallucination.
Could be a food coma. I don't know. But
Hey, let me grab this from Salvador. Salvador, thanks for listening today. He says, how does a monastic life living isolated, kind of a truncated thing there, but a short prayer truly meant from the heart is probably more impactful than a 12-hour prayer session. That is, I think, the heart of it. And yeah, I think that's even like what the Old Testament prophets kind of say, is if you're just going through religious motions, it's empty and meaningless and even offensive to God in many ways. But I'll tell you what the monastic challenge right back to it would be. If a short prayer truly meant from the heart is more impactful, what about a long prayer truly meant from the heart?
There you go.
And so, and that's where, I mean, Randy, to like what you're saying, where fasting even comes in. I mean, fasting is truly a long prayer expression.
Yeah.
So, you can't just dismiss it entirely, even though that's not the camp I like to swim in personally. I tend to be more like, God's got this. I don't need to be praying constantly in that sense of, oh, please, please. But my corrective has to be over there because it's definitely in the Bible,
Totally.
So, yeah. Anyway, thanks. Thanks for listening today. Good stuff.
So this one, I think we've answered something similar to it recently, but I don't know that we got to the whole part of the question. Maybe, I don't know. It sounds familiar to me, but
okay.
Matthew 27:15 51 states something like many holy people died and were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city. This paragraph is discussing the resurrection of Jesus after his death. Who were these holy people that were raised to life? I'm not sure what's going on in this paragraph. Why were they resurrected before the end times, where we will all get our glorified bodies?
All right, so let me read it really quick. This is right after Jesus' crucifixion. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. And that's it. That's all you get on it. And it's so cool. I mean, it's just, it's almost like this, I don't want to say a throwaway line, but it's almost like this like aside he just wanted to put in to bring mention to, because like, how could you not? Who these holy people are, who knows? Holy people that apparently lived in Jerusalem or were buried in Jerusalem. That's about all you know on that. Why did they raise to life again? Well, we know that throughout Jesus' ministry, he had raised people to life. It's the manifestation of God bringing life out of death, bringing restoration out of, decay. And the entire point of Jesus' resurrection is that the curse of death and sin in this world has been broken and is reversing, and God is assaulting this world now with his kingdom. And when I say assaulting this world, I mean, he's assaulting the kingdom of darkness, and it's not going to stop until Christ comes again. So what you're getting is like when something powerful happens, there's aftermath. In Jesus' death, the back of sin was broken. So you're seeing aftermath effect is basically the logic of this. And yeah, these people died again. I mean, Jesus is the first of the new resurrected body, but boom, life is going out. There's an effect of what happened here reverberating through creation. Like when God shows up, stuff happens. I mean,
So,
that's basically the short of it.
You're taking it as those people were resurrected and then stayed on the earth?
No, well, yeah, for whatever period of time. But I mean, I'm not saying that they then are still walking the earth or that they ascended into heaven or that they were resurrected in the way Jesus was resurrected. I mean, what makes Jesus unique is that he came back in the glorified state or the renewed body or the hope of what we have to come. He didn't come back to life with the same mortal body, if I can put it that way. Still a human. I'm not denying that, because humans were always meant to be, when I say immortal, I got to be careful with the term, but they weren't meant to die. God did not design them to die or intend for them to die. So that's what does it make sense?
Well,
or am
I'm just going to have to go back and read the whole thing for myself.
Yeah. Sure thing.
No, my thought process is how it kind of unfolded was Jesus dies, resurrected, and he's bringing the holy people with him. So they're in heaven. They're not back on earth. They're resurrected, yes, but not like still remaining on earth. Yeah.
And it says they came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection. So even though it happens at the crucifixion, it's mentioned, it's kind of giving a statement that could apply to the entire event. So you could make an argument that they came back glorified, I guess. Mm-hmm. I just always took it the other way, but yeah, I think you can make a case for it.
Either way, I think that it's what's to come, right? It's an image of what's to come.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it wasn't just Jesus himself being God and only God gets to do this because that's the way it happens. But no, he's giving us the imagery of like, no, this is what's going to happen, guys.
Yeah.
So like put your faith in me.
Right.
And this, you'll be with me forever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm even wondering like, okay, we think like, oh, Lazarus got raised back to life after 4 days. 4 days,
yeah.
4 days roughly. Was this people who had died, in the month before Jesus, or was this someone who died, 1,000 years before Jesus?
Yeah, it's like King David or something coming out of the tomb, right?
Why, and it could be written about somewhere, but clearly Jesus' resurrection was written about, and people had a hard time believing that he was back to life. So are there accounts of whoever these other holy people are, showing themselves, revealing themselves to people? Are there accounts of those written somewhere? It seems like it would be a big deal to all happen within one city. So,
So what is the definition that why are they using the word holy?
Yeah. How do we interpret that here
Moses,
in Matthew? Yeah,
Are there
and
biblical
this,
characters holy level or
right, because the way that holy even gets used today versus the way it gets used in the Bible sometimes is not always like synonymous. It can have different nuances of meaning. So is it the people who are set apart from God? Just meaning that, whether they were that good of people or not, or is it using it to mean that they were particularly good and righteous people? Yeah, it's a little tough to say.
Did they die before Jesus? And if they did, then how would that description of holy differ? Because then it's like, well, they were up to date on their sacrifices. The burnt offerings were in accord and everything was good. And so
right,
they're now holy.
Yeah. Remember though, like in the Old Testament though, what holy just basically means is set apart. It's like set apart for a special purpose. So Israel is called a holy nation, even though a lot of times Israel is like the worst nation on the block because God has still set them apart for a purpose. So how does that kind of factor in too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just fun to think about.
It is. Yeah.
I was just kind of thinking like in the Apostles' Creed, a lot of times I hear people get hung up on Jesus descended into hell.
Yeah, right.
And then in some translations, it's Hades, not hell.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that at all? Because I know that a lot of times people get hung up on that part right there.
Yeah. So let me give you the line. If you're thinking Apostles' Creed, like you go, he was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended into hell. The third day he rose again from the dead, right? So, I mean, it's just kind of giving this litany of the moves. And the Apostles' Creed is originally in Greek, and the Greek word that gets translated hell is Hades. And the $1 million question is, what are we to infer from Hades? Because there's multiple ways you can go with it. And no one thinks that that the Greek mythological system is true, right? That's not what it's saying. But the two options on the table are this. At one level, Hades can refer to just like where dead people go. Like if you die, you're in Hades. Good person, bad person, saved person, unsaved person. Everyone who's dead goes to Hades. It's a state of being. And so it could just be a way of the creed saying, no, Jesus was truly dead. We said he was crucified, died, and was buried, but he was stone cold dead. I mean, he was Hades level dead. He went to the place and realm of the dead. He went to the state of being of death. And a lot of churches take it that way. There is some indication, though, that it could mean something more specific, meaning like what we think of as the place of judgment for those who are evil, if I could put it that way. And the typical, like what we kind of think of as fire and brimstone, hell. And you can look at 1 Peter 3, for example, where it talks about Jesus going to speak to the spirits in prison. And some like to take it a little more in the judgment aspect, but never to suffer. That is not on the table. And I won't get into why, but if he did do it that specifically, you got to think about it more like storming the enemy capital and claiming it as your own, almost a victory march and parade right into the gates of hell, rather than, oh, I have to go suffer under the devil and get prodded by pitchforks or, something like that.
All right.
Yeah,
so,
good question.
Kelly says, but God said, was going back to the whole prayer thing, right?
Yeah.
But God says we can bring everything and anything to him, and it can help build our relationship through communication. I don't think how short or long something is, as long as we are in communication with God, that's what's important. So intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's where's your heart at,
Right,
for the prayer, and then it can go on as long as you need it to.
Yeah.
And like, have you been around, like, this is one guy that I'm friends with at church. And if
say
he's
my name, it's okay.
No, because not quite. Yeah. But you count, man. You count. But like, some people like this, right? Like if you can get more than 3 words out of him at a time, it's a miracle. And it's not that you're uncomfortable or that he's socially awkward. He just doesn't have a lot to say. Just kind of a quiet guy. There's other people I know at church that if they start a conversation with me, I'm not getting away for 20 minutes. And only then because I like walk away while they're still talking. So how does that work in a relationship with God? I mean, both of those people I think are sincere and want to share a relationship, right? Yeah. Some people are talkers.
Yeah.
Some
have you ever walked away, like a conversation has started at church, then you walk away and you come back and they're still talking?
Yeah.
I've never done that one while on the phone with anyone. Set the phone down real quick and then you're like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I did that with someone once. I kid you not, because there was a history. I came back 40 minutes later and it was unbroken. on the clock.
40 minutes.
And when I say I came back, I was like sitting at my desk or at my table, and I like my laptop, and I was doing stuff, and I just put it down on speaker because there was no sense of conversation. It was just, it's just going to spew. And yeah, 40 minutes.
Wow.
Like, all right.
That's impressive, honestly.
I really,
I could not
really,
do
there should be
that,
like medals for that or something like that, except it would encourage it, you know.
Yeah. Kent, station break. You want to do it?
He held up a sign saying he doesn't have a live mic.
Oh, he
So,
doesn't. Wow.
Who,
All
who-
right.
Who would want?
I think
to
Randy's got
hit the
station break.
I do?
Yeah, I think Randy's got station break.
What do I do? This is 21-6
Make it
the
up.
net?
Make it up. Make it up. He'll go. Confidence right now. Boom. 30
What are we
seconds.
doing here?
Yeah, we're answering all your questions. Give us everything and anything you got.
Where are we at?
We're at 21-6 the net.
And where are we from?
We're from Fellowship of Faith.
Yeah.
Go ahead and check us out. Is it live?
We are live right
Yeah.
now.
What
We
is
sure
no,
are.
the
for
new
live
deal?
Live.fellowshipoffaith.org.
Live.fellowship.
Yep, or just
of
fellowshipoffaith.org. Yep.
Nice.
Yep, you got it.
FOF plus page.
All right. Let's see. This is gonna be like the $64,000 pyramid. This is like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Oh,
You know, we're
okay.
progressing you up.
Okay.
I don't know what level we're at here, but do you want to risk your cash on the table right now to go for the next one? Or are you going to cash out your chips?
No, we'll keep going.
Okay,
I
good,
feel good.
good.
I feel
Okay,
good.
So if someone wants to send a question in, what number do they text it to?
Oh, what number do they text it to?
Ask the audience.
Okay, I don't have my glasses on. I know it's
He's got it
815
out.
314 0363.
Hey,
Oh,
all right,
or-
all right.
Or here,
Oh,
let's try
yes.
this. Let's try a different
That's the
language.
$1 million question.
Do you guys know how to count in other languages?
It's like
See.
a 10,
Okay,
I
we'll
can
go.
count
See,
to
no
10 in
Which
Spanish.
Spanish.
a few.
Okay,
What?
we'll try it.
Ocho, uno,
Well, now I'm saying
Cinco.
read the numbers.
tres,
Oh, you just want us to count to 10. Yeah, we
uno,
got
cuatro,
Uh-huh.
cero,
Yeah.
seis, tres, cero.
Tres, seis, tres.
Oh, tres, seis.
Yeah,
Yeah, what he
363.
said.
Dave's got one. Which language you choosing?
I don't know. Pick one.
Oh, I picked Spanish. I got
yeah,
off
you got
easy.
off easy.
Portuguese.
Okay,
Like
each-
Latin or Greek. Come on.
Okay, hotch, each, go. That's Japanese.
Ah,
Just start from zero.
That's too high. I want to go somewhere. I want to think that much.
Okay.
Yeah, you broke
Konnichiwa.
my will at the area code.
With the Sorry.
I lost it.
Now I know how to get him to stop talking.
I mean, 8 is pretty high up there. You got to count all the way up to it.
I know it is. It's like,
Uh,
yeah, I'm not going up there on those other numbers. I don't know how to say zero either.
I have
so-
to do that with the alphabet every time. If it's like, oh, what letter comes after Q?
Yeah.
Well, let me start at A and work
So
my
what-
way there.
What
and
letter
hit it.
does come after Q?
I don't know. Uno, P, Q, R.
Yeah, there you go. Right? Yeah.
Arr.
Yeah. Need on ramps.
Exactly.
All right, what else?
All
we got?
right.
Exactly.
Back in
So
the fray.
next
Count.
one in the line here. Short question from all the other ones, kind of a change of pace.
Okay.
Is FOF a gay affirming church?
Thanks for asking. Great question. Obviously, a really contentious question today, and a lot of emotion around it. Look, I'm not trying to be evasive on this. I don't know what that means. I think I can interpret what the person is asking, but I don't like getting baited into categories, because oftentimes the categories that people set up are incorrect categories, in my opinion. And I think that's happening in the debate today. So rather than answer yes or no to a question, I'll just tell you what we believe at Fellowship of Faith. We believe at Fellowship of Faith that there are people in this world that are attracted to people of the same sex, men to men and women to women. And we believe at Fellowship of Faith that those people are deeply loved by God, just like heterosexual oriented people are. At FOF, I would love to see our chairs, we don't have pews, like filled with people who have same-sex attraction. They matter to God, and God wants to be a part of their life. And that's fantastic. I also believe that the Bible says homosexuality is not God's initial design, nor is homosexual practice something that's honoring to God. So what that means at Fellowship of Faith is we will teach that, and we will say that, and we're not looking to embarrass anyone or call anyone out or put anyone on the spot or brand or judge anyone, because Fellowship of Faith is a church filled with people of all kinds of struggles, backgrounds, and sins. And what we hope church is a place where you can both feel welcome and uncomfortable at the same time. I don't think church should make you feel comfortable, at least not all the time, or at least not as the highest goal. I think Jesus' message fundamentally makes you feel uncomfortable, but it's good, so it's worth it, because Jesus is calling us to a different way of life, all of us to a different way of life, no matter what our struggles or preferences or backgrounds are, right? And that's always going to it's going to challenge every human being, not just on sexual lines, but certainly on sexual lines as well. And so that's what God's Spirit does, is he challenges us and he convicts us. And as long as people are open to hearing, and we understand it's a process, it's a wrestle, it's involved with a lot of struggle, oftentimes a lot of setbacks, a lot of failure, stuff like that. So does that make us gay affirming? Well, I think it does, but I think you're going to get a different answer depending on who's asking the question. Yeah.
And if you've got any follow-ups to that answer,
yeah,
send them in.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
And I would imagine within the general discussion, if it's like affirming or non-affirming is generally you hold to the traditional biblical view of marriage between a man and a woman. Affirming would be basically marriage can be between anyone. So if that's what their intent is by this, because that's generally how people were, at least in my opinion, or I guess what I've heard is that's how they refer to it. Are you an affirming or non-affirming church? Do you think being gay is okay or not? That's
but see, we just already, what does that even mean? Is being gay okay or not? What is even meant to be interpreted by is being gay okay? So it's automatically lumping a whole bunch of other assumptions in to what you make in one statement. And I think that's where the whole thing falls down. Because there's a lot of people that will say, well, if they assume, I should say, that if you do not affirm, to use that language, gay marriage as something acceptable or God-pleasing, that you are therefore anti-human beings who have same-sex attraction or reject them from being a part of your faith community. Which that happens in some places, but it would be incorrect to brand all places like that because it's just not true. And that's why I don't like the binary way that a simple like litmus test question. I'm not saying the person asking here today, I think it's sincerely and innocently asked, and but that often happens, especially in the social and political arena, right? And I just want to kind of give a shout out to you, if you are someone who is same-sex attracted, and I can fully kind of get, well, maybe not fully, but I can really empathize with how scary or how difficult it might be to step foot into a church, wondering if you're going to be found out, scrutinized, judged, looked at weird, yelled at, condemned, any number of things. And that would be terrifying.
Well, and not only just in a church. I mean, just in life.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
Why me? If that, and especially if you're already a Christian, and then you come to realize I have same-sex attraction, you would just be like, why? Why do I have to deal with this? Why do I have to go through this type of stuff? You would I'd be a little pissed, why'd you do this, God? But then it's like, you get back to everything else that you have struggles with and sin with.
And you can say the same thing.
I can say the exact same thing. It's just,
that's exactly
it. You were wrestling with this 3 shows ago. It's like God, Steve, I think you were saying God, why am I just so good looking? I mean, it's just been
because I care for others and I don't want them to feel bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Why am I so blessed?
Right.
They shave their head. It doesn't look like that.
No.
You know what I mean?
I've tried. It's just
yeah, exactly.
I would say whoever sent in that question, it also makes the assumption that somehow we look at the Bible and we look at what God's kind of rules and laws and desires are in our life, and that somehow we meet the mark. We don't.
Yeah.
So I
not
just
a single
want
human being. Yeah.
Whoever wrote that, I just want you to know that we all
be strangely encouraged in that.
The glory of God, and that's why we need Jesus. So take courage in that. Take strength in that.
We need that shirt, Andrew. We all suck.
Yeah, we do.
The FOF store.
We're just trying to suck less.
That'd be a great Lent shirt, though, wouldn't it?
It really would. Get it in purple.
Yep.
Match the colors. It works.
For real. Embrace
All
the
right.
suck, just like the Cubs, right?
Embrace the suck.
Jump down to the next one here. To any and all in the room who would like to answer.
Ken.
In the spirit of 1 Peter 3:15, why do you believe what you do?
All right.
What gives you the confidence that your faith is justified?
And I'm not going to answer it, but I just want to read it
Read it
right away
first.
to frame it. So this is 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts, revere Christ Jesus as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason for the hope you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. So yeah. Why do you believe what you believe? What's the reason for the hope that you have? Can you state it? Yeah, with gentleness and respect.
So the 60-second elevator speech version, I guess.
Is that what you want?
I don't know.
60 seconds.
Yep.
That's a long elevator.
That is a long elevator.
How many
That's-
floors is 60 seconds?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
downtown
This is downtown Chicago.
Very
Yeah, this
tall
is-
building.
right.
Where there's union workers working on the elevator that's busted. You're going to get a floor and a half and then you're done.
Not either guy. Any of you guys want to take it?
It's to me, it's simple. I've seen what he's done in my life that is not even possible without the grace and the mercy and the help of God. And so therefore I have no other way to explain the things that have happened with me. And so therefore it's that simple.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. I can resonate with that too. Yeah.
And then affirming is like, oh, well, now I'm going to go ahead and read scripture and like, this is what Jesus did. And this is what it means to be a Christian. And this is what I need to do. And but no, by no means can I do it, accomplish anything by works. And therefore it's all by the grace of God. And there it is.
Oh, great stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Andrew, Randy?
Yeah, I would say kind of along those same lines. It's more so looking back in my life that you can see I can see where God has worked and where he has been present and leading me and going through different trials. And that kind of brings me to where I am today of like, okay, yeah, I guess this all makes sense. Like I can see the track record of how God has been with me and working with me. In the present moment, it's more difficult for me at times to go, yeah, I absolutely believe this. And let me tell you why. I go, I don't know. I guess look at my life and that's where it is. So that's kind of where it is.
But again, and we've mentioned this before, it's not our job to convince anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So can you read that passage?
Yeah,
again?
and it's what I love about that passage too. And so this is 1 Peter 3:15, and it says, in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have.
With the gentleness and respect, that's where I struggle with that only because I don't know that I've ever, and this is just me personally, I don't know that I've ever come, and I'm thinking about circumstances as I'm saying this. So I'm a little hesitant now.
Have you ever been aggressive about it?
Well, I don't know that I've ever been like, you're an idiot, I hate you. And so therefore you're going to listen to my story.
Yeah.
Maybe the gentleness piece. Yeah. But always in love, I think.
Yeah. Like gentle's not a word that I aspire to or use, even though it's kind of a fruit of the spirit word that we're supposed to. But I just don't think of gentle as being a descriptor for me. And I imagine a lot of guys probably don't.
In speech, too.
Yeah.
That's.
But I get
gently.
I get what it's saying.
I can handle a baby squirrel gently. You can do that. But how do you talk in that way?
Yeah.
I don't know why baby squirrel, but that's...
Yeah, right.
Because you have a lot of them probably in your trees right now.
Probably. Yeah.
In your attic. Yeah. I've had that before.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right.
Let's see. I'm wondering if I could find the original Greek word used in John 14, verse 2, where it says, in quotes, rooms. The verse says, in my Father's house, there are many rooms. Some translations use mansion or mansions. Since we Christians are now over 1 billion people, what are we supposed to be thinking about God's house and our room in it?
Yeah, so if you want the original Greek word as used there in John 14:2, you would pronounce it monai. That's plural. All right, so monai is how you would say it. You know what it means? Rooms.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how they translate it.
What it means.
Rooms. So a little bit of history of the word, though. The King James translation is where you get the mansion thing from, and it gets confusing because when you hear mansion today, you think of some big opulent place, so we're up here in the north side of Chicago. You think of maybe one of these Lake Forest houses or Barrington houses, one of these estate or Bull Valley or something, these estate style homes, 8,000 square feet and 19 bathrooms or something like that, right? And that's not what mansion meant in English in the 17th century.
Yeah.
What it meant in the 17th century is just more like a dwelling place. That word has morphed over time. And actually there's some people who write about this, like the commentators, who go, it might even refer to like a more modest dwelling, believe it or not. But I think that's not the point of what Jesus wants us to extract out of it. Like, well, how nice is the room going to be? I mean, is this like Super 8 level, or is this like, Hilton or something like that? I don't think that's the spirit of it. The point is that there's a place for you as part of God's kingdom, connected to his house, if I can put it that way, that he's made for you. And it's using a marriage metaphor. And that's what gets missed sometimes in this, because the marriage practice, as I've read and have been taught, at least this, and in first century Judaism in Palestine, would be like, if I was to propose to someone, or like I was to get engaged to someone, I would go and prepare the house. I would kind of go away, and it would often be attached to like the family compound, because families lived together and kind of would build in the same, I don't know, fence line, or maybe house on house on house. There's practical purposes to that, especially in a less technological and less, shall we say, policed society.
Travel was slow.
Yeah, all of that. So the idea that Jesus uses, especially with all this wedding imagery, is that Jesus has like, you are betrothed to Jesus. You are engaged to Jesus. When he ascended into heaven, the Bible will use the metaphor, as he's using right here, that he's going to his Father's house to get everything set. But when the wedding day comes, which is his return, he's coming back, as he says here, to take you to be with me where I am. So really root this in the wedding metaphor of the first century, rather than trying to figure out, is this like, 8,000 square foot mansion versus a, studio apartment.
It's a twin bed. Bunk beds. What are we looking at?
In that same tradition, wasn't it kind of like they didn't know the time or the hour that the whole wedding and everything was going to happen too? Like they would prepare the house, and then it'd be like, there'd be like little rumors of like, oh, I think it's almost ready. I think it's ready.
That is beyond my pay grade. I don't know on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. I think in the culture that was part
well, I
of
know
what he was
Jesus will
saying,
use that like as a metaphor, like use that as a
for when he
parable.
comes back for
But is it a
his-
parable because that's the actual practice, or because it just works good for the story? Because there's a lot of
Gotcha.
things Jesus does in this parable that aren't like normal. Like the prodigal son would not be normal. So,
Well, it also changes the game of MASH. Remember playing MASH as a kid? Remember MASH? You put
the
MASH
top.
at the top, and then
No.
on the side. So you have a square.
yeah.
MASH is at the top. Who's your 3 girls that you're, maybe thinking you want to
Yeah.
marry?
Yeah.
3 numbers down below, that's how many kids you're going to have, and the 3 on the other side, that's where you're going to live. So geographic location.
Yeah. Okay.
So you say go, you start marking, and then you say stop. And let's say it's 7. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, circle 1 until you're all completed.
Okay.
Well, MASH stood for mansion, apartment, shack, or house. So that determined where you were going to live.
I feel deprived. I've never played this game in my
We'll
life.
play today.
Okay,
Well,
we
right
should.
after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
For our
See if
100th
it gets
episode.
done.
For our 100th episode. Yeah.
We're going to
Playing
find
that.
out what Dave's
We're also
future
gonna
should have been.
Make the little cootie catcher things.
Yes.
The number,
Yeah.
the colors.
Yeah.
Just straight throwback 90s.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
I think that's a much better question, Kelly.
And thanks for putting us back on track. Kelly.
Kelly says, what's the difference with the word Sheol or Gehenna for hell?
Just 2 different Greek words. Well, Sheol's a Hebrew word. Sheol's the Hebrew word that's more or less the equivalent of Hades in Greek, just meaning the realm of the dead. Everyone goes to Sheol, everyone goes to Hades in the general sense. Gehenna is a more specific word, a Greek word used in the New Testament that often refers to hell as a place of judgment. It actually refers to, it stands for, it's Gehinnom, which is basically the Valley of Hinnom, which is a valley outside of Jerusalem that was known for a lot of desecration. You can read about it in violent, bloody battles and like pagan bones buried and all, child sacrifice and all kinds of evil stuff happened. Much later on, it got used as like the garbage dump, and they would burn the garbage. So there's like pitch out there, they're pouring tar, and it's constantly smoldering, and there's maggots everywhere. So like when you get the metaphors of like the worm that never dies, or the smoke going up forever, it's like literally a visual image of like the garbage dump burning.
Yeah.
Though some will say that the garbage thing didn't happen until after Jesus, so it's a little debated, but that's the difference between the two. Broad sense, narrow sense of what you mean with hell, but that's the guts behind it.
All right. So Kelly's got a follow up. Do we live in the mansion when heaven comes to earth?
I don't know. What do you mean? Like King James Mansion? Like just a room? I think it's a metaphor.
Or when
Yeah.
he's saying that he's preparing it in heaven, is that different than from heaven versus the new heavens and new earth? Maybe is that, I don't know. Is that what she's asking?
Yeah.
What are we
I
gonna
think,
live in?
I think fundamentally, Kelly, you don't want to get too literal on this. I don't think you want to go, well, I know I'm going to have 4 walls and a roof, and that's going to be my dwelling place because it says in John 14:2 that I have a room. I think you want to go with the spirit of what Jesus is saying here and the metaphor of what it means. Because, I mean, let's face it, the new heavens, new earth. Is eternity really going to be solitary confinement to your room? I doubt it, right? It seems to miss the entire spirit of what's happening with the hope of eternity.
Do I have my phone with me?
Kent is wondering,
But what if
Do
you
we have our
no
phones?
bars?
Ah,
oh yeah, no, you'd have perfect bars.
Yeah.
7, there'd be 7,
10G
not just
network. 10G network.
4.
The 144,000 network, you know? Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I think we have time for one more here.
All right.
How should a Christian couple handle the conflict of one spouse wanting more children and the other spouse not wanting to expand their family?
Oh,
I don't
man.
know if that's a 4-minute question or not.
No, it probably is because it goes beyond the scope of something that can be answered in every detail. First, thanks for asking. I mean, the sincerity, it's just heartfelt. You know, talk about a struggle. You're not alone in that struggle if you're listening here today. It's just really, really hard. And I think you just have to base it in ongoing, honest conversation. I don't think one person can threaten, browbeat, beg, or manipulate the other into it. I mean, it happens a lot, but you just got to keep at it with each other. You just got to keep talking about it and sharing it and working it out and see if you can come to a sense of peace or resolution, because you don't want this to kind of become a source of bitterness or resentment between the two of you. And I just really suggest, if you're not really finding resolution in this and you're finding a certain sense of bitterness growing up in your relationship, like go talk to someone in the flesh. Go talk to a good counselor or a pastor or someone who's going to give you just, good, grounded, solid biblical worldview kind of advice, and someone who's demonstrating some like relational, emotional, spiritual maturity. But it's worth the investment, a few hours of your life and a few $100s to work through something that's so central to your family.
and
Yeah.
I would say too, like, think long term outside of just the immediate right now. Your kids are great and all, but your relationship is should be forever, right? As far as like when the kids are gone, it's you too. So you want to get there, because it may this may be such a thing that drives a wedge in between you that is I guess you have to look at that to say, could I potentially lose my spouse over this? And I don't think you should, but is that a potential in this day and age? Absolutely. So, or you could just do what my wife did in relation to like a dog, like just bring them home and then the spouse has to deal with it. So go adopt 4 kids, and what are you going to do? Like, they're going to be standing there, all big eyed and like, oh, geez.
Looking cute. You
Right. You can't say no.
But you hear the stories though sometimes of people who've like sabotaged the birth control or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Fake
Yeah.
a vasectomy or
Yeah.
you're just like,
Yeah.
Well, like
you don't want to be in
I
that situation.
whispered over here. I said the wife wins, because generally I think that's the case. But like I've seen where people have resentments towards their own child in their
Well, and that
relationship,
too.
and it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
brutal.
Which is all the reason I think, and you mentioned this before, like you both got to be on board with this.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And there's something to maybe a little bit of biblical advice of learning to be content with things outside of your control, to find contentment. Paul from prison says, I've learned to be content in every situation. And it's not because he wanted to be in prison, but sometimes things are out of your control. Yeah. And I'm not saying just resign yourself, but finding some peace in it and joy in it can go a long way too. But yeah, I really encourage you, talk to someone on this. I think it's well worth your effort. And we got to land the plane here.
Yeah.
We're getting the not just a minute, but seconds. Well, here we go. This is episode 99, and we thank you for listening to the last double digit that we have on the air. We're going to be on next week. That is the plan, God willing. And it will be episode 100, the century episode. and we are going to have some kind of special
Steve has big
celebration that
plans.
Steve
If
has in
you
mind.
don't
Yeah.
want to hear it, pray unceasingly to Jesus for him to come this week. If ever there was a time, pray this week.
Right. So look, we go live every Wednesday afternoon, 12:30 Central. Always like to put this out there. If you've missed past episodes, catch them. We handle a lot of topics, maybe something that you've been thinking about or asking about and just haven't asked yet. Go to fellowshipoffaith.org or go to any of your favorite podcast providers and just search for questions you never thought you could ask in church. You get past episodes right there. If we didn't get to your question today, it is in our inbox. We've got a lot more to hit here. We will get to them. And just thank you for listening. Great being on the show with you guys today, guys. And to all our listeners, God bless.